Hey guys, hello, hi, how are you? Welcome to the series. I think, let me see if the session has begun. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So I think we're live now. So let's wait for another 30 seconds or so for everybody to join in. And then we move on to the part that we need to look into. And the part that I'm mentioning is technical interview questions in data analytics interview. All right. Okay. Let's see. Just a minute, guys. I hope there's no error. No, I think it's fine. Yeah. Cool. So let's begin. All right. So if I just look at the data analytics interview questions, I think what we have seen is yesterday we've seen that when we talk about technical interview questions, the technical interview happens at two dimensions, basically two ways. One is at length level. Okay. So one is length level in which, hey, hi, Ashekar, good afternoon. And we've seen that in the length level, what we do is, what the interview is trying to understand is that how many things do you know in data analytics, right? So he might be saying that, okay, are you aware about the project life cycle? Are you aware about the tools? Are you aware about the treating outliers or handling missing data or data cleaning or data preparation or data featuring or data wrangling? Apps or DBS or database management systems. Do you know all these kind of things? For example, I'll take up the case over here. For example, let's say he might say that which are the tools do you know, right? What is the project experience that you have? Project life cycle management experience do you have? What is basic? Are you aware of the basic terminologies used in this? And are you aware of then I think a web scraping, let's say, right? Scraping data from internet, are you aware of that? And finally, he might talk about something else, I mean, which might test your knowledge about it. For example, how are you about the machine learning? So this is length level stuff. Now in tools, let's say I'm talking about Excel, Python, right? Tableau, Power BI, and SQL, right? SQL. These are the tools that we have, right? So if he is aware that, okay, you understood the tools that are required, now what he needs to do is to understand. So once he makes up his mind, okay, the candidate knows these things, now the next level of question that he's going for is depth. The question is at its depth. Okay, so we are going for depth level questions. Now he's trying to understand that, okay, you understand tools. What is the extent to which you are basically you understand these tools? So he might ask some specific questions related to any one of these things. For example, if let's say in the project life cycle, he might say that what is the can you explain about the ETL, and when have you done when generally have you done ETL in the entire project data analytics project life cycle? So what he's trying to understand is that extract, transform, and load this particular project, when did he handle, when did he use this? Okay, so here the specificity is talking about depth over here, right? So generality talks about length, specificity talks about depth. Specific questions means he's trying to understand what is your level of knowledge over there. We also understood yesterday that whatever we should talk about in a structured manner, right? Instead of randomly saying anything, what we need to do is to present our thoughts. We should learn to present our thoughts in a structured manner. Okay. And what do you mean by structured manner? We have seen a couple of examples yesterday that how can certain questions be, for example, if you have to explain a project life cycle, you can explain the project life cycle in a structure, or you can explain the project life cycle just like various components of cycle and just, doing it that, just saying it over there. So the point is, if we can keep the answer structured, I think that's the best thing that we can go ahead with. And in the entire technical interview questions, of course, you'll find a lot of questions on internet through us, through various sources. One of the various technical questions which are trending these days as well. But knowing the question is not sufficient. Please practice structuring your answer. How can you structure your answers? Okay. So today we're going to see some questions in which we'll see how can we take the example of structuring the answers over here. For example, let me start about DBMS. Okay, let me start about a DBMS, database management system. So I'll straight away move to specific, which is SQL. So if I ask a question, what are various commands in SQL? If I ask this question, what are the various commands in SQL? Somebody say that, what are the various commands in SQL? How can you answer this question? Of course, in this question, we would understand. Take a pause, even if you're watching this content on a recorded basis, take a pause over here and try and answer this question. What are the various commands in SQL? In case you have covered SQL, in case you're aware of what SQL is. Right. So I think Raj Sekhar that is correct. We have DDL, we have DML, DQL. Now, again, point is, how are you going to answer this question? I'm not looking forward to whether you know this or not. If you have done SQL, obviously you know it. How are you going to answer this question? That's the question. जवाब कैसे दोगे यहाँ पर आप? How are you going to answer this question? In a good structured way. You can write in phrases. Think about it. Let's take 15 more seconds over here. Right. Think about it. Now, so people generally move on to somewhat aligned. There are various commands which are DDL is such as DDL. I think you're talking about such as DDL is used for create, drop, truncate, alter, and DML for data manipulation. Something like this. Something on correct on this line only. So I'll say in a structure there are 5 major type of commands. So I'll say 5. I'll say there are 5. The first sentence would be 5 major types of command. Namely, data definition. In fact, I'll not write it completely here. I'll write it like DDL, which is data definition language. And we know what is it used to. It's used to define the data architecture in SQL. Right? Then we have DML, which is data manipulation language. Of course, we'll say that only, right? It's there to basically manipulate the data or of data. Let me write the other one very quickly. So we have DDL, DML, and then we have DCL. Then we have DCL commands, and then we have DQL commands. Okay. Now, in a structured fashion, you say there are 5 commands used in SQL. The first one and the most important, or one of the most important one, is DDL, which defines the data architecture. It defines what is the name of the database, how many tables are there in the database. It defines the name of the tables inside the databases. It defines how many and which are the columns in each and every table. So it is there basically to give the overall structure to the database that we have. Okay, this is data definition language. It uses some sub commands over here like create, alter, truncate, drop as for manipulating the, or other I should say, defining the data over here. Then once we have the architecture ready, we need to either put in the data or we might have to work with already input data over there, right? Right. So DML over here is for manipulation of that data. Ab data architecture ban gaya. Now that next is for manipulation of the data. We might insert the data over here, or we might alter, or we might update the already inserted data over there. So this is where we are manipulating the data inside a table. Okay. Then we have data control language. Once we have these two in place, we require data control language in which we can actually take control of who's visiting what level of data in the organization. So we have only two commands, generally two commands over here. One is a revoke, and there is another one. What is the other one? Revoke and grant. Okay. Now, TCL is transaction query language in which transactional control language in which, languages like, or other, I should say, subqueries like save point, rollback. These are the things which are used over here. This is for transactional control. Okay. In MySQL, we not used to do a lot of things over here because I think there's an auto save option over there. Now, DQL is nothing but data querying language in which we need to use the select button, right? Or rather, I'm saying select command over here to fetch the data, right? So now if I had to answer this question, my answer would be there are 5 types of commands. DDL, data definition language, used to create databases, create tables inside databases, used to majorly define how many and which are the columns of the databases in a way on an overall structure, defining the overall structure of the database. Then we have data manipulation language, used to insert data into databases or used to update the already insert data in the databases, or it updates the column names as well. At the same time, it updates the data as well. Now, DML is generally used for rows over here in the data, whereas DDL is generally related to the columns over here. If I talk about one single table, right? Think about it. DCL is data control language in which we control who gets what level of access to what data, right? That is data control language. Then we have TCL, and then finally we have DQL. The data query language actually helps us retrieve some of the data that we stored in the database. Now, this is a structure. 5 टाइप के कमांड है, ये 5 टाइप की कमांड है. हर कमांड पे एक एक लाइन बता दिया कि क्या करता है. That way I'll be easily able to convey my thought process to the interviewer, and I'm actually conveying that I have structured thought process, right? I'm approaching this question in a structured fashion. That's the point over here. What are various commands in SQL? 5 commands. These are SQL. This is how you should answer technical questions as well. Okay, so I'll just download this. Let me open up another page and let me think of another question over here. For example, let's say if I talk about ML. So one of the questions would be, let's say I ask this question. I think a lot of people will be very interested in this particular question. How to handle missing values in a data set. My question is very simple. How to handle missing values in a data set? It's a very simple question that I've asked. How can you do it? Now, if need be, can you guys just try and put in your answers over here? Phrase wise, take a minute. If this question is asked to you, imagine you're sitting in an interview, and if this question is asked to you, how do you answer this question? Remember, we need to have an organized, structured answer over here. रैम्बल नहीं करना यार, जो पता है अपने को, स्ट्रक्चर योर आंसर. ओके. If the missing values are less than 70%, we can impute with mean or median, if numerical or categorical with missing. Yeah, something. How about from that, mice algorithms? What are mice algorithms? Very nice. I think this is a nice, see, the immediate question. What was the immediate question that came to my mind? What did I ask immediately after looking at this reply? I asked, what are mice algorithms? Isn't it? Okay. Umesh is also writing something. Fair enough. Very nice. Okay. No, still not getting the point. I guess still not getting the point. Guys, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. Is that the way we handle the missing values? Think about you are in a part of a project. How you're going to answer this? Removal of missing values of lesser number of missing values. 2 second simple limitation can be used. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. I think this is in line. Structure it 100%. So what you do, I've asked, how do you handle missing values? And what I'm hearing is, this can be done, this can be done, this can be done. That's what I'm hearing as an interviewer. Let's say if I say I'm taking a collective interview of all of you right now, and I'm saying that, okay, how do you handle missing values in a data set? If I ask this question, as usual, I'm hearing, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. So we can remove the entire data, the row or column, or we can impute, or we can fill it with mean, median, or mode, or whatever. That's what I'm hearing right now. Now, that's not a wrong reply at all. That is correct. But is it structured? The element of structuring is slightly lesser over here. Structure is slightly on the lesser side over here. Let me see. How do we basically structure this? Okay. How do we structure this? Okay. Generally, now if I just explain the background of it, what we actually mean by this thing. One is, of course, we remove the data. Right? One is, of course, we remove the entire data where a lot of null values are there. We remove the entire row or column, basically. Then second one is we impute. Impute means uski jagah par koi value dal dena. Imputation then can also be done by two things. One is measure of central tendencies, and predictive algorithms. Predictive algorithms like KNN, K nearest neighbor. Okay, so this is what I'm saying right now. As of now, missing values are generally, how do we handle the missing values? Now, my answer will not be we can replace it with mean, median, or mode, or we can apply KNN algorithm, or we can apply, multivariate importation by chained equation. That is basically mice algorithms. Correct. That is absolutely 100% correct. But, right, what I want to hear it, how much do you know about missing values? It's not like, कि मैं पूछ थोड़ी रहा हूं एज ए इंटरव्यूअर, मैं जानना थोड़ी चाहता हूं कि आपसे कि मिसिंग वैल्यूज को क्या करा जाता है, राइट? सो व्हाट यू कैन डू इज you can structure your answers over here. For example, by structuring, I mean that when to use what. एक sentence, just speak one sentence only on what to use when. Okay. For example, okay. So if this question is asked to me, how to handle missing values in a data set? So I'll start with the first thing. I check the number of missing values row wise and column wise. So I check the number of missing values per row and per column. And if the number of missing values in any row or any column is greater than 60%, I drop that row and column. That is the first method that we check, do we need to apply removal of a certain portion of the data? That is, if the row consists of more than 60% of missing values, then I drop the entire row or I drop the entire column. That is the first thing. Assuming that this takes care of a lot of missing values over here, but if I continue and find that missing values are still present in the data set, now we can use the next type of method to deal with or to handle missing values, which is imputation. Now, imputation can also be done in two ways. One is we can use measures of central tendency like mean, median, and mode. We use mean when the distribution. Now we take a call on whether to use mean or a median by looking at the distribution of the variable in which we are trying to impute the missing values. For example, if the distribution of the variable is more or less normal, then I impute the missing values using the mean. But if the data is skewed, that is, the data is either right skewed or the data is either the left skewed, either ways, I tend to use the median to impute the missing values. So this is another thing that we can go for. We can use the measures of central tendency to impute the missing values. Now, this is for a numerical variable. For categorical variable, generally people use mode, but I generally used, mode is a decent way of doing it, but I tend to convert this. Here, I try and use the predictive algorithms over there. Predictive algorithms like KNN neighbor or mice algorithms. If I talk about KNN neighbors, this is my favorite way of imputing the missing values over here. And in fact, I've used KNN neighbors with a lot of success in the past to impute the missing values. अब मैं समझा के भी आपको बोल रहा था, तो I took some more time, right? But this is how I would have answered this. Now, the good thing about it is, can I see the structure over here? Structure is, अगर 60% से ज्यादा डेटा गायब होगा तो रो और कॉलम को ही रिमूव कर देना है. नहीं हुआ तो फिर मैं आता हूं इम्प्यूटेशन. इम्प्यूटेशन भी दो टाइप से हो सकता है. सेंट्रल टेंडेंसी को यूज करिए, प्रेडिक्टिव एल्गोरिथम को यूज करिए. सेंट्रल टेंडेंसी में भी मीन को यूज करा जा सकता है या मीडियन को यूज करा जा सकता है. आई कैन यूज मीन or I can use median based on how the distribution of the variable is there. Once we do this, now if we had to go for, let's say, categorical input over there, then I go for something called as predictive modeling, called as KNN, K nearest neighbor, in which I use this particular algorithm to impute the missing values even in categorical data, right? एंड देन फिर मैंने एक सेंटेंस डाल दिया कि बहुत सारे केसेस में मुझे तो KNN से काफी सक्सेस मिली. आई गॉट अ लॉट ऑफ सक्सेस यूजिंग KNN, राइट? आई गॉट अ लॉट ऑफ सक्सेस यूजिंग KNN. के नियरेस्ट नेबर से मेरे को काफी सक्सेस मिली हुई है और मैंने काफी इसका यूज करा. Now, obviously, this particular reply has a structure in it and also has an advantage that मैंने KNN में complete करा, तो probably अगर मैं KNN में discussion ले जाना चाहता हूं तो I'll stress a bit upon KNN and I'll be able to take the interview into KNN अगर मेरा KNN पढ़ा हुआ है तो, right? This is how I take care of it. And KNN is fine, right? I mean, if somebody asks that why to use predictive algorithm, it's much better over here. The predictive algorithms are much better, isn't it? Let's say there are two neighbors over here, and let's say the two neighbors are very similar. For example, इसकी फैमिली में भी 5 मेंबर्स है, इसकी फैमिली में 6 मेंबर्स है. Similarly, I mean, it's not a nuclear family, it's a combined family. Okay. He has 2 children. He also has 2 children. Right. यहाँ पर भी ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स साथ में रह रहे हैं, यहाँ पर भी ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स साथ में रह रहे हैं. Now, this guy is income level is between 1.5 lakhs to 2 lakhs per annum, and the income level of this guy is also 1.5 lakhs to 2.1 lakhs per annum. Now, this guy has a SUV, and now I need to predict what this guy has. Now, it's much better to predict it that this guy also will have an SUV, because the data is very similar to each other. Their data is very, very similar to each other. बहुत ज़्यादा similar है. That is the advantage of k-nearest neighbor over here, in a way. So if you have to explain it, you can explain it like that, right? Okay, interesting. Right. So I've used KNN, Rajshekhar. I've used KNN with categorical data as well. I use one hot encoding, convert this into the numeric data, and then I try and predict it. भाई आप प्रेडिक्टिव एनालिटिक्स जब आप लगाते हो तो प्रेडिक्टिव आप कोई और लॉजिस्टिक रिग्रेशन लगा लीजिए, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. You apply a predictive algorithm, try and predict that, classify that, classification to predict that particular variable. That's it, right? But it works, it does work on categorical variable as well, but थोड़ा घूम के जाना पड़ता है. You do first use impute the categorical variable with numerical variable, and then you can apply it. Okay, that's how I do it. This is a risky approach. फायदा भी मिला है, नुकसान भी मिला है, दोनों चीजें हुई हैं मेरे साथ, राइट? सो आई थिंक इट डिपेंड्स अपॉन द डेटा. यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड योर डेटा एज वेल. कैटेगरीज अगर बहुत सारी है फिर तो ये डेफिनेटली करना चाहिए. देयर मल्टीपल 7 to 8 कैटेगरी, 10 कैटेगरीज आर देयर, देन आई थिंक आई शुड डू इट. अदरवाइज इट विल बी डिफिकल्ट फॉर अस. ओके, cool. So this is how we can go ahead with this thing, right? That's the meaning of how to handle. This is how you can give a reply in the structured fashion over here. Okay. Similarly, if I ask another question, now if you can please tell me, how do you handle, how to handle outliers in a data? ना ये आउटलायर डेटा एनालिटिक्स का ज्यादा काम नहीं रहता इसमें. डेटा एनालिटिक्स doesn't worry much about outliers because he is not building a model. That is majorly the headache of data scientist or machine learning engineer. Okay, so data analysts have to analyze the data. So outliers are okay with them. But if you are asked this question again, try and structure your answer. What is the kind of structuring? Can you just tell me 5 points? Right. So I'll start with this point, first one. Then I'll move on to second one. I'll move on to the third one. I'll move on to the fourth one, and 5. Now, it need not to have 5 points. It can have 6 points as well. It can have 7 points as well. It can have 3 points as well. But it has to have a structure. The structure should tell you that how to handle outliers. सबसे पहले मैं number 1 ये करूंगा. Then I'll do this. Then I'll do this. Kind of stuff. Structure your answers. Can you structure your answers? Think about it. Take again 30 seconds and phrase wise ही सही, give me the structure of your answer. Give me the structure of your answer. Yeah, you're most welcome, Rashika. I guess we're talking to Sia. Okay. So, think about it. How would you answer this question? How to handle outliers? Very nice. Very nice, Nagendra. Can you just give me all the points one by one? Or was that a question, or is it one of the first element of your answer? So Nagendra says that what is an outlier? So Nagendra, was that a question or was it the first thing that you'll talk about? Now, an outlier is nothing but a point in a data set which doesn't generally belong to that data that is very high. For example, if there is a class of engineers and there is a 56-year-old student, then student is a outlier. Okay, because mostly you're expecting that the students will have an age group of around 32 sorry around sorry 18 to 25, right? That is the age group of a graduating students, right? Was an outlier. What is an outlier? Outlier is somebody who is beyond that age group and still doing graduation, so that's an outlier. Similarly, if I talk about, let's say, the the BP, blood pressure, let's say glucose. The glucose level generally lies between let's say 80 to 130. 80 to 130. 80 to 130 के बीच में नॉर्मल ग्लूकोज लेवल रहता है. Now, if there's a glucose level going up to 230 or 240, that's an outlier. Or something which is lesser towards 50, 60, that's an outlier. Okay. So medical data also has outliers. So finding outliers present, verify whether outliers are genuine. Then outliers can with various techniques using VIF threshold, etc. Fair enough. Fair enough. Correct. So the first thing is, I think if I handle this question, I'll talk about defining the outliers first. I'll define the outliers first, because outliers by definition are very, very subjective over here, and a lot of people use percentile approach using box plot, which is basically quartile approach, quartile range approach. And that's what I think somebody has put in. Yeah, IQR box plot. IQR से use कर सकते हैं box plot से. But how do you define the outlier, right? So somebody might say that, okay, 1.5 times IQR के ऊपर जो है वो outlier है, या नीचे जो है वो outlier. Now, if you're not aware of these kind of things, don't worry about it. What the thing I'm trying to say is that the definition of outlier is subjective. Okay, so I'll first try and define the outliers, and I can tell you that for different kind of variables, the definition of outlier can be different in the same data set. In the same data set, outlier might take a different definition for one variable, and it might take a different definition for the other variable. So it's very important to define the outliers. Then I think I agree with this thing, whether they are genuine outliers. Now again, genuinity of the outliers. For example, let's say if I draw a box plot over here, and if I go for the outliers over here, right, you treat this and this outlier the same way. An outlier which is just the outlier, you drop it on this particular point, you also drop this on this particular point, मतलब दोनों point का significance एक ही हो जाता है, right? Both the points have the same significance now. So for example, even if there is an outlier present over here, it's big outlier. Let's say I'm talking about the age. So there is somebody at the age of 32, outlier hai bhai. And somebody with the age of 26 is also an outlier. Somebody with the age of 32 is also an outlier. And somebody with the age of 65 is also an outlier in an engineering class. Now, the point is, shall I treat 26, 32, and 65, all of them in the same manner? Of course, the answer is no. So we check the distribution of the outliers as well. In a way, we are checking the genuinity of the outliers over here. And then I can talk about various methods to treat outliers. Anyways, I'm not here basically to tell you, how outliers should be treated. I'm here to tell that wo aapko koi bhi bata dega. I'm here to tell you how should I have answered this question in a structured manner. Going one step further, I'll create copy data set over here. I'll copy my data set and I'll say that, okay, I'll have two data set, one data set with outlier, the other data set without the outlier, and I'll build my models on both the data sets and see which data set is performing. Right, this is another step that you can go for it. So this is how you handle outliers in a data. Anyways, पॉइंट ये नहीं कि आउटलायर कैसे हैंडल करना, पॉइंट ये कि इस क्वेश्चन को कैसे हैंडल करना है. हाउ डू वी स्ट्रक्चर आवर आंसर? We need to put a structure to our answer. You cannot just start with, okay, we can apply the IQ or box plot method. That is correct. That is 100% correct. Yeah. But the point is that structure डालो थोड़ा सा. पहले define करते हैं outlier क्या है. तो डिफाइन करने के बाद हम जेन्युइनिटी देखते हैं, देखते हैं कि किस वेरिएबल में कैसे आउटलायर्स हैं, एंड देन वी कैन थिंक अबाउट मेथड्स ऑफ ट्रीटिंग आउटलायर इफ रिक्वायर्ड. सो डोंट जंप टू द सेंट्रल प्लॉट ऑफ द मूवी स्ट्रेट अवे. स्टार्ट विद द स्टार्ट, then move towards the central part, and then move towards the climax. That's what is called as structure. इसी को स्ट्रक्चर बोलते हैं. कोई भारी चीज थोड़ी स्ट्रक्चर. स्ट्रक्चर इज अ सिंपल थिंग. सर कॉमन सेंसिकली आप कैसे एक्सप्लेन करोगे? स्ट्रक्चर इज समथिंग व्हेन अ वेरी वेरी कंसर्न्ड पर्सन वांट्स टू एक्सप्लेन नॉट सो इजी कंसेप्ट टू अ लेमैन. बोलते हैं ना, लेमैन को समझाइए. लेमैन को समझाने के लिए स्ट्रक्चर चाहिए. और जब भी आप कुछ स्ट्रक्चर के थ्रू समझाते हो, इससे दो चीजें कन्वे होती है. देयर आर टू थिंग्स व्हिच आर कन्वेड. नंबर वन, दैट यू आर वेरी क्लियर अबाउट दैट टॉपिक. That is first thing that is conveyed. Second, you will be very handy in explaining it to the others, so hence will be a great addition to the team. Simple as that. बहुत ही simply बात कर रहा हूँ. I'm not talking about n number of, I'm not talking about some high-fi stuff over here. आपको पता और आप structure से बात कर रहे हो. That is how it is. Simple as that. Right. So yeah, that is what I was talking about when we talk about putting structure into the answers. Now, if I just look at it, there are a lot of questions which are quite common these days as well. For example, what are database? So sorry, I'll just rub it off. What are various database objects? What are the various database objects? Right? What are various database objects? It's a question. Again, try and put up the structure over here. Simple बात है. जैसा अगर if you guys have worked on MySQL, I think you don't have to worry about putting a structure, because SQL बहुत प्यार से structure नहीं दिखाता है. We can always say that the various database objects are, of course, tables. Then we move on to views, procedure, and fourth one are functions. There might be other objects as well, but again, you can see it. You can answer this question in a very very structured manner, isn't it? There are basically tables, views, procedure, and functions, and one liner about the application of all of them. One liner and say that we generally work on tables more than rest of the other part, right? But the rest of the other parts are also very very handy. Okay, so these are what are various database objects. People have started asking. Now if I take you guys 2 minutes to data visualization, indexes, of course there are indexes as well, but they're not database objects, right? Indexes majorly are stored separately, right, in a table. Now what are various database objects? This is the question. Apart from that, there are certain very very common questions these days. For example, what is a context filter? What a context filter in Tableau? ये आजकल बड़ा कॉमन हो गया. This question is asked in, I have seen that a lot of people asking this question. What a filter context filter in Tableau, if you have worked in Tableau. Okay, you might be asked questions on what are the most common DAXs that you have used. Okay, now if I ask a question, what is DAX and its application? So if you have done Power BI, then in that case, probably you will relate to this question. what are DAXs and what are their application. उनका application क्या है? What are the application of DAX? What is DAX? That is first thing. And what are their applications? So how would I structure my answer over here? Can you try and define it? Take 30, 40 seconds and define and structure your answer. You're asked this question, what are DAX and its application? Okay, so बताइए. Think about it. What are DAX and what are its application? उसके applications क्या है? The moment I ask this question in an interview, the first thing that I hear is DAX is data analytics expression. That is correct. That is the abbreviation of DAX. What is DAX? Think about it. Can you just put in phrases what is the answer for this question? Think about it. Okay, so data analysis expressions are formula expressions, language used for analysis. Okay, that is one way of looking at it. Correct. Others? What else? So yes, I mean, we can start with data. DAX is nothing but data analytics expression. So I would start with the definition, which is the all of us know. I'll move on to definition. Right. All right. Definition. Okay, that is one way. What is DAX and its application? Now, definition. This is a definition. If I talk about application, I'll move on to application. Now, once I define it, I'll move on to application. In application, I'll say that DAX is used to do two things. One is to create a measure or create an additional column in the database. Can I say this? Either I create a measure or इसी का ही तो काम आ रहा है ना DAX, और तीसरा कोई application है DAX का? No. Measures an additional column. So we can say it resembles DAX in a way is nothing but it's a formula based language basically using a lot of functions, inbuilt functions in Power BI to do a lot of calculation and manipulation in the data at a column level. Now the application of DAX is that we create measures or additional column in this. We can create measures or we can create additional column in the data set. Now again, advantage यहाँ पर ये है कि अगर मैं ये सुन रहा हूँ, the only thing, the last thing that I heard about the application of DAX, and I'll immediately ask this question that okay, what are measures and what are additional column? Additional column to chalo simple, it's just an additional column. But what are measures? Define measure. And now if we know what is measure, then I can take the interview again towards my comfort zone because my measures prepare करके आया हूं यहाँ पर, right? So that is how I can do it. And after application, we can talk about the impact of it. What is the impact? DAX nahi hota to kya hota? Socho. If you have worked on Power BI, now think, had DAX not been there in Power BI, how things would have changed over here, right? It would have been very difficult to put up an additional column over here, and that is number one. Number two, for every minor or major thing, I would have inputted another column in the data set. Measures are nothing but it's a means of saving the storage space, at the same time having a measure which can act as a column once called upon. So it's an instruction to run as a column. It's just a stored instruction. DAX. Oh, sorry, measure. I use DAX to create measures. And that's where the application is coming in. That without actually including or without actually increasing the size of the data, I'm still able to calculate a lot of things in the data, and I can visualize that in the report view once I create the measure without actually increasing the storage capacity of the data set over there. That's the point. Right. This is what is the case over here of context filter what is DAX and its application, right? Context filter bhi aap dekhiega, context filter is something, if you talk about tableau is something which is, it's very very common these days in tableau. Okay, now if I take another couple of questions, I think uh, if I talk about most common questions over here, actually I just wanted to discuss top 10 questions. I think we'll discuss 4 to 5 questions over here, or probably more than that. I would see SQL may, I think I've gone through it, various commands over here. Another question which is very, very common in SQL these days, and I think I've asked this question multiple times, and I was asked this question a few number of times, that how to find second or third ranked item of a column in a data set. Right. So the question is very simple. How to find the second or third ranked item in a column in a data set? This question belongs to SQL. बहुत बार पूछा गया. That is, for example, there are employees over here and there are salaries of employee. So there is employee ID and their salaries. Right. Let's say there are 5,362 employees in a database. Let's say. Now you're asked to find out the a certain rank, a certain second or third rank, maximum salary ke hisab se to you can find the second rank. How can you find the okay? All right, Mandy, no worries. Please look into this series. I think the series will be helpful to you. I think today we are about to close the session, close the series only, right? So if I had to find, let's say, which employee has third category ranking over here. Correct. So this is one. So this is limit to offset one, right? But I hope you know all the methods. The question is not how can you do it. There are 3 to 4 ways of doing it. One is through subquery. The other one is to use limit offset. Most of the students answered this question because this is the first answer. Okay. This is the first thing that pops up on internet once you put this question. Right. So limit offset, and there is another way of using rank and dense rank. These functions can be used over here. These functions are used over here. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mandy. Correct. It can also be used nth value window function over order data. 100% can also be done with that. Correct. Right? That's how we can do it. So all of you know it. Again, बहुत jaldi, a lot of people move on to limit and offset too quickly over here. Okay. They say that, oh, yes, we can do it. I know this. This is limit and offset. And after limit and offset, they recall that, oh, it could have been done through a subquery as well. Then they recall, oh, it can be done with rank and dense rank. It can also be done with nth window function as well. The point over here is that put a structure in your answer. Our structured answer would have been, well, there are multiple ways of finding the third rank salary in the data set. The top 3 ways which are coming to me right now is using a SQL subquery, and you can talk about the subquery. Then we can use something called as limit and offset functions, which are very, very useful to basically offset some level of data and show only the top 3 data over there. And then we can limit, offset, and I think we can use the order by. We need to first go for order by, then go for limit, offset. Okay. And finally, I can recall rank and dense rank function, which can also help us do it. भाई कोई दिक्कत नहीं, एक एक लाइन हर क्वेश्चन के ऊपर, हर कमांड के ऊपर बात कर लीजिए, बट द आंसर हैज टू बी, देयर आर मल्टीपल वेज, एंड दिस इज व्हाई आई कैन डू इट नाउ. इसके बाद भी कैन यू टॉक अबाउट विच वन ऑफ देम इज द मोस्ट इफेक्टिव वन और द मोस्ट ऑप्टिमम वे ऑफ डूइंग इट? Most optimum way of doing it, I don't know. Probably rank dense is the most optimum way of doing it. Rank कर दो, third rank को display कर दो. That is one way of doing it, right? You can also talk about which of the 3 solutions are slightly more optimum. Subquery is not, because subquery is complex and SQL has to run that subquery on row by row to find out the third rank one. So that is why it's going to make it a tough way using subquery over there. Right, so this is another question which is very, very common these days in data analysis interview, especially in SQL. What else? I think I've not downloaded a lot of files. I think I've downloaded only a couple of them, so I'll just finish it off. All right, so I'll start from here. This is the one. Then we have the outlier one. Finally, we have the database objects, and then this is another question that we have. Right, so these are certain very, very useful question, guys, and I think we can say that it's safe to assume that there'll be a couple of questions which might be asked using this. Now, let me recall, is there any other question which is very commonly used these cases in these days? Oh, yeah. Right. So I think a bit of statistics will also be used over here. I think you are basically... I'll definitely ask another question over here. What are type 1 and type 2 errors? Type 1 and type 2 error. I'll go for the Roman symbol. Type 1 and type 2 errors. And type 1 and type 2 errors generally happen with hypothesis testing. This is where I'll go for hypothesis testing. And I think in a lot of interviews, I have asked this question and people have asked this question: explain hypothesis testing. Right? Or I could have asked, so I think we're not left with a lot of time to discuss the questions in detail, but let's see. What is explain hypothesis testing? Explain hypothesis testing. What do you mean by hypothesis testing? Right. So explain hypothesis testing by giving an example as well. Right. So you can do that as well. That is one thing. And then once we do it, I think in statistics, it's very common to ask for type 1 and type 2 error. Right. Type 1 and type 2 error to बहुत common है. Right. What is type 1 error? Type 1 error is the... Let's go for it. What are type 1 and type 2 error, guys? What are type 1 and type 2 errors? I think if you have gone through statistics, what is the term hypothesis? Term hypothesis, explain hypothesis testing. Hypothesis is nothing but an आप किसी चीज के बारे में अंदाजा लगाते हैं, So it's going to rain this evening because I can see cloud, and I think those clouds will take another hour or so to travel to my place. So I think it's going to rain in the next 1.5 hours. Is an hypothesis, right? And this is what we basically go for. Hypothesis testing is basically using a sample parameter, or we are using a sample statistic. We go for a population parameter, estimation about the population parameter, and that is generally one of the hypothesis testing. But hypothesis testing is definitely vast, sir. It's an assumption, it's a glorified assumption, but we need to have what do we need to have, right? We need to have data to prove it. Okay, we use numbers over there, we use a process, an experiment over here. So type 1 error is nothing but when you reject a true null hypothesis, right? When you reject a true null hypothesis was true and you rejected it. You always want to reject null hypothesis in a hypothesis testing, but if you reject a true null hypothesis, that's type 1 error, and you accept a false null hypothesis, that is type 2 error. Okay, so yes, type 1 and type 2 error, because confusing it, and somebody who is able to explain in a structured manner type 1 and type 2 errors, then he knows about hypothesis testing and how use statistical concepts like hypothesis testing in practicality. Okay, you're talking about p-value, Umesh. That is not probability. Type 1 error is not the probability, right? Type 1 error is not the probability. आप p-value की बात कर रहे हैं. That is p-value. Probability of making an error, of rejecting if null hypothesis is true. If that probability is very less, so if the p-value, p is low, null will go, right? That's the statement, because the probability of type 1 error, if it is less, then we go for accepting the alternate hypothesis, right? That's the entire point. That's the case over here, right? So explain hypothesis testing. This is something that might be asked. You might be asked about some of the simulation cases over here, for example, A/B testing. What is the impact and use of A/B testing? A/B testing is basically testing that if I go for this particular way, what will be the outcome? If I go for this particular way, what will be the outcome? Basically, comparing the outcomes of two different kind of, uh, you know, um, uh, two different paths taken in a business situation, right? So that's the case. These are all the questions that we have. I'll just download this as well, right? So I think all of you will agree that there is no way. Okay, there was a seventh board over here. No worries. So there's no way I can discuss all the questions. Just a minute, guys. I think I'll just give me a minute. Yeah. All right. So someone is saying that type 1 error means, for example, I have done COVID test and test says that I have COVID, but I actually do not have COVID. That is, again, it depends upon what is the hypothesis, how you're framing the hypothesis over here. If the hypothesis is, generally the null hypothesis is the status quo. Alternate hypothesis that what you're trying to prove. आप टेस्ट करने गए क्यों हो? Because आपको लग रहा है कि आप COVID है. So you have COVID. The alternate hypothesis, I am suffering from COVID. Null hypothesis, I'm not suffering from COVID. That is the null hypothesis. Null hypothesis is, I'm not suffering from COVID, status quo. Alternate hypothesis, I'm suffering from COVID. Now, if I reject the null hypothesis and I accept that I have COVID, the alternate hypothesis, when it was not true, is my type 1 error. राइट, जब मुझे कोविड नहीं था लेकिन टेस्ट में ये निकल गया कि null hypothesis should be rejected and alternate should be selected, that's when I say that this is a type 1 error. Correct, that's the one. Right, so these are certain questions, guys. I'll just quickly use a PDF one basically and convert these JPEG files that we have into PDF so that I can share it with the respective people. And I'll convert this into PDF. Meanwhile, guys, I think we are moving towards the end of the session. And if you have any doubts, feel free, and I'll be more than happy to solve those doubts. If you have any doubt, put it on the chat box and we'll definitely discuss those doubts. Right? Please do it. And I think this is where we will end this series. And thank you very much for being a part of this series. I think this is what I had to share. Of course, if I start talking about technical question, I think all of us will agree that there is no dearth of technical questions that can be asked in an interview. There is no dearth of technical questions, right? So let's not worry about what will be the question which will be asked. Worrying about what will be the question which will be asked in the interview is a stupid thing. What you should worry about it, if a question is asked, how am I going to structure my answer? What is it I'm going to do? That is what you should be worried about majorly. All right. Okay, just a minute. Right. So that is why if you have any questions, guys, I repeat, please put it on the chat box. So what are type 1 and type 2 error, Mandy? I think I've just explained it, right? Type 1 error is when you actually reject a null hypothesis when it should have been accepted, when you should not have rejected it. So rejecting a null hypothesis when it is true is type 1 error. Accepting the null hypothesis when it's false is type 2 error. Okay. And it's not necessary which kind of error is generally more dangerous than the other one. I think a lot of people are under the opinion and type 1 error is something that we should have avoided at any cost. Not necessary in certain data set, in certain cases. Type 1 error is fine. We need to avoid type 2 error. So as you develop, I think if you like to know more about this, I suggest you can watch my video on end-to-end projects. I think if you watch that, you'll be able to understand what I'm trying to talk about. I think it's there in iNeuron Hindi channel. Okay. There are questions over here. Sir, is it possible for me as I'm from a non-tech background? 100%. I'm also from a non-tech background. What is a non-tech background? Non-tech background is non-IT background. Right. I'll try and give you the link. Yeah, just a minute. Just give it. I'll just post the link over here so that correct. Now we are in place. Cool. So coming back to your question, guys. Yes, BBA plus MBA 100% effective. By BBA plus MBA वालों को काफी domain knowledge रहता है. They have a lot of business acumen, which is very nice. That can be used. 100% is possible. आप hands on work experience दिखाइए. If you're able to project hands on work experience, I can assure you that you will be able to make the transition. I have seen uncountable number of non-tech people. What are non-tech people? Non-tech people are people who have not done programming before this. Otherwise, क्या फर्क पड़ता है non-tech और tech में? How is IT, people from IT different from us who are about to start the programming? The difference is their ability to use programming. प्रोग्रामिंग से थोड़ा ज्यादा दोस्ती है उनकी क्योंकि 3-4 साल से कर रहे हैं. हमें 6 महीने लग के करनी है उसको प्रोग्रामिंग. We'll cover up the gap over there. Okay. So it's possible, 100% possible. Okay, if you want that link, let me see. मेरे को जाके खोजना पड़ेगा उसको, but let me do it. I'll go for iNeuron Hindi. Okay, and I go for this is the one. And if I go for playlist, and there we go. Copy link address. So this is the link in which I've talked about outliers. I've talked about I've talked about outliers, how to handle missing data, how to actually बहुत सारी चीजें हैं इसमें. I think this series will definitely help you out. Okay. So this is where the link is, Mandy. I'm pursuing masters in generative AI course in iNeuron channel, but don't have the hands-on experience in machine learning, deep learning, generative. How do I address this in an interview? Why? See, you cannot address this, Nagendra. Right? You have to have hands-on experience. Right? There are certain things handling needs will not be. There are certain things which are irreplaceable. There are certain things which are irreplaceable over here. And not having hands-on experience on the role that you applied for is irreplaceable. एंड हैंड्स ऑन एक्सपीरियंस डजंट मीन दैट कहीं काम करना है आप छोटा मोटा फ्रीलांसिंग प्रोजेक्ट उठा लीजिए you can take up a lot of projects on internet have some hands on you can take up projects from Kaggle you can take up projects from a GitHub or you can take up projects from other places as well get 3 to 4 projects in your basket and then talk about it it's very very important okay it's very important for you to do practical stuff that is irreplaceable in an interview गलतफहमी मत रहिएगा आप शायद if you have a lucky streak probably you'll be able to justify your fitment without the hands-on experience but you need to be really really lucky for that and my advice don't leave things to luck okay you're most welcome Vinay thank you very much thanks a lot राइट सो बहुत सारे जगह है बहुत सारी तरीकों से आप जनरेटिव एआई के नागेंद्र प्रोजेक्ट निकाल सकते हैं यू कैन टेक आउट प्रोजेक्ट्स plenty of projects are there for free plus even if you don't get it for free you should not think twice for buying for investing some money for buying projects iNeuron में बहुत सारे projects है iNeuron.ai has you visit our website iNeuron.ai and there's a lot of there's an internship portal which has a lot of projects yeah okay that I thought that was my question was not complete I'm working on hands-on experience on GenAI all right fair enough yeah that's what I'm saying you need to have hands-on experience thank you Mindy thanks a lot thank you very much thank you very much that's the that's the motto isn't it all right guys so I hope I'll really see you guys with another I think mostly Monday or Tuesday we are beginning with another live series over here and that will be end-to-end projects of data analytics so I think we'll meet you over there thank you guys thanks a lot thank you very much for your presence and have a great rest of the week and hopefully catch you guys up on the other side on the other week in the next week on the next live series bye bye